Hi everyone, Pete Schooner here from Ohio Today Magazine with another video chat with an Ohio expert. Today, Dr. Jason Jolley joins me. He's a professor of rural economic development in the Voinovich School of Leadership and Public Affairs at Ohio University. Dr. Jolley, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to talk. I know you've been very busy. I want to just sort of first, though, check in to see just how you are doing today, how the last few weeks have been for you.
Well, like everyone, I'm struggling a little bit working from home. I have three kids, so we're trying to do virtual schooling, and you're everything from a teacher to a short order cook. But we're managing great university partners and community partners, and everyone's pulled together and doing a lot of Teams meetings and Zoom meetings and phone calls.
Absolutely. I think you're not alone in that experience, that's for sure. So again, thanks for joining us. We're going to talk about rural economic development and some of the things the Voinovich School has already been doing for a number of years and now is maybe coming into a greater need in the Appalachian region. But first, let's talk about sort of the broader context, if you don't mind. It's clear by now that the coronavirus and all the necessary countermeasures that have taken place are really going to have a big impact on the economy at all levels. I think we saw it first in the stock market, but that's such a high level. I'm wondering, can you give us a clearer sense of really what the effects will be, sort of on the street in real communities, especially the rural ones that surround the Appalachian region that Ohio University is in?
Sure. Well, I mean, one thing we know from the academic research is that rural communities are less resilient than urban communities. And a lot of this has to do with a smaller business base. There are fewer employers, there's fewer connections to major markets. And so they just don't bounce back as quickly or as well as some of their urban counterparts. So I think we're going to see a longer bounce back period for rural America, and particularly Appalachia and Appalachian Ohio. One thing that we are seeing now as we look at unemployment projections is that the northeastern part of the state and the sort of the Cleveland area and some of the other counties around there have been hit a little bit worse with respect to unemployment. But we're also seeing the unemployment rate increase in our counties in the Appalachian Ohio region as well. So we have a long road ahead of us. And I think there are multiple currents that are taking place. One is going to be, what are we going to do on the local government side with respect to tax revenue and tax laws? And hearing from some communities, they're looking at 10 or 20% cuts. So that's going to be a challenge. How do you deliver the services that our citizens need when local governments don't have the tax base? The second thing is going to be, what do we do with so many of the unemployed and the unemployment insurance claim? So I think it's something like 1 million new people, if I have the number right at the time you and I are talking. And that's probably a conservative estimate, as many people are having trouble getting their benefits, applying for their benefits. So, and then the third piece will be, what's it like to reopen? And just because the governor or the president or someone says, we're going to reopen and we're going to take these protective measures, that doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to go right to the street and say, okay, great, we can go to the movies again. Great, we're going to go to a restaurant again. And sort of what's the new normal there with social distancing? And then I think the last piece, and this is one that really concerns me, and I'm not an epidemiologist. I practice economic development and now teach public administration and economic development. But if we have a second wave, complacency kills. And so it will kill people and it could kill businesses. And so if we get complacent, we have a second wave in the fall or sometime next year, and we don't have a vaccine or we don't have something that can treat this, a therapeutic, that will be a real concern, that businesses kind of get back on their feet. We're doing the best we can. And then suddenly there's a second wave. So I think it's a very complex problem. And I think we have to approach it with caution.
Sure. So I know that the Voinovich School has been involved in helping local economies like this in rural areas develop further, try to be more resilient. And now in the coronavirus age here, the Voinovich School has really emerged as a vital resource for the region. there are numerous headlines coming out about all the great different programs and resources that people and businesses and even communities are taking advantage of. I'm wondering, what are some of those ways that the school is helping out and addressing this economic fallout?
Sure. Well, we have a long history of working in Appalachian, Ohio. And so the Voinovich School, in conjunction with Bowling Green State University, is a university center under the U.S. Economic Development Administration. And we have a 25-year history as a university center. Bowling Green serves 27 Northwest counties, which with the exception of Toledo is predominantly rural, and we serve the 32 Appalachian counties, all of which are rural. And we're known as the Rural Universities Consortium between Bowling Green and ourselves, and we have this long history of partnership. And so what we have done over this 25-year period is help communities with economic development planning or impact analysis or feasibility study. And so now we are sort of repositioning ourselves through the University Center to help these communities with some of the COVID-19 crisis. And what I fully expect from the US EDA is that once all their guidance is in place, they're going to really lean on university centers such as ours to deliver even more resources to communities in terms of planning and preparation. And so that's one area where we're already shifting and doing that work. The second area of work that we're doing is through the US EDA is around the coal economy and the decline of the coal industry, closure of coal-fired power plants, et cetera. And so that's funding under something EDA has called the Assistance to Coal Communities program. So we have a $1.6 million investment from EDA, and we're partnered with the Ohio Valley Regional Development Commission, which is one of our regional organizations. And we're working in their region, which is in Southern Ohio, around the closure of 2 coal-fired power plants. And so that's really, a big shock, a loss of a lot of tax base, a loss of a lot of jobs, and we're helping them with those recovery efforts. And, COVID-19 is sort of this on steroids times 1,000 in terms of the job loss. So we're trying to take some of those lessons that we're learning from working in the decline of the coal economy and apply them here. The other thing is, because these are this is an active grant, we're already trying to weave the COVID-19 needs into the grant and discussing with EDA how we might do that. The third thing I would say is, as part of our work with the decline of the coal economy, we have a large grant request out to EDA right now to help with another coal-fired power plant closure and looking at how do we build resilience into some of our rural communities and the Buckeye Hills and the Ohio Mideastern Governments Association region. So these are the regions that cover Athens, and then they go up into Coshocton County in that area, which is where a power plant is going to be closing. So we're already being asked by EDA, and this is a grant that's under consideration, to weave in some of the COVID-19 narrative. So COVID-19 is beginning to dominate all of the work that we're doing in rural communities here in the state. And so we're trying to take the expertise that we have as it relates to the coal economy and its decline and weave in some of those lessons learned. But it's a real challenge to do that. We're fortunate we have great partners. We don't do anything alone. So we have great partners in our rural development districts and our local governments. So we're fortunate that we have some of the resources and the expertise to bring to bear on this issue.
Wonderful. I wonder, a lot of what you're describing, and I imagine what we can expect as we gain a better understanding of how severe the economic impact will be of all this. This is pretty heavy stuff, and it's not very bright. So I'm wondering if you could tell us, where are you finding some bright spots or some hope, either in the professional work you described or just in your personal life?
Well, I have been a practicing economic developer before I came into academia. And even in my work at the university, I worked at the University of North Carolina before I came to Ohio University. And my work there and my work here has always been working with communities, working with economic developers, trying to help particularly rural and distressed places. And when folks think about economic development, they think about what we call the buffalo hunt, which is you go out and you try to land this large project. So Amazon trying to place its second headquarters, and folks are familiar with that. And it picked 2 locations, New York City and the Washington, D.C. area, and then it pulled out of New York City. But folks think about that going out and recruiting companies. And I think and I hope that when we come out of this, maybe we'll practice economic development and we'll be a little more ecumenical and have a little more humility about how we're doing it, because we're not landing a lot of large companies in our region. We are landing some, but we're not landing a lot. And I think the idea that companies are going to be looking to expand, relocate, and especially in the immediate post-COVID-19 world, is probably not going to be true. So I think we have to think about, how do we build greater resiliency in our communities? How do we build greater networks among our small businesses? And then there's a broader question, which is, I mean, we have a mixed economy, but a free market economy, in which part of that means that you source things globally, you produce things where you have the highest competitive advantage and or comparative advantage, and we're bringing in a lot of things that we're using, particularly medical supplies, et cetera, from China and other countries. And it kind of raises a question when you have a pandemic like this: what happens with these global supply chains, and what's their stability? And we're finding out they're not particularly stable in some cases. So I think we may need to think about, for some critical pieces, medical equipment, medical supplies, et cetera. Is there a way, as a country, we can source more of that locally? What are some of our backup plans? And what I hope comes out of this is there's an identification of new market opportunities, and some of our entrepreneurial firms can identify spaces in which they can set up shop or change their business line and grow. And again, that's an optimistic perspective that while still, I think, taking into account some of the new realities that we're going to face.
Sure. Well, thank you for that. I mean, I agree that there are a lot of silver linings that are present, and I share your hope in that a lot of great positivity and resiliency comes out of all of this at the other end. Thank you again for joining us. Do you have any sort of final words to any Bobcats who might be watching? Any advice?
Well, I would say I've been really impressed with the resiliency, not just of our community, but also our students. And one of the things that we've done to help both our students and our communities, I also direct the Master of Public Administration program. And one of the things that we've done is students are required to complete an internship. And so our dean, Mark Weinberg, was gracious enough to use some dollars that we had to pay for those students to be virtually placed in communities. We use some of our EDA grant dollars to do this as well. Appalachian New Economy Partnership dollars that we have from the state. And so we're paying for these students to be virtually placed in communities this summer to help with the COVID-19 crisis. And so they may be working on economic development or community development or other needs that these local governments may have. And so I'm really proud of that, because it gives students an opportunity to fulfill their degree requirements. It gives them a sense of purpose. They can apply the knowledge that they're learning in the program. And it also shows that we're a good faith partner with our communities, and we're trying to help them the best we can in a challenging time.
I'm sure the students really appreciate that support, and then the communities, of course, to have them as a resource to help them through this. Well, thank you again for joining us. I won't take any more of your time, let you get back to the very important work you just shared with us. So thank you once again, and continue to take care of yourself and take care of our region. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you.